Anyway, so Margaret goes to this first meeting of Nancy's secret club. The other members are Gretchen and Janie. And, God, here's where we really start seeing Nancy. Starts out with Nancy fat-shaming Gretchen for taking too many cookies and slut-shaming another girl in their class, Laura Danker. Laura is very tall, has a large chest, and is rumored by Nancy to go behind the A&P with boys like Evan and Moose. And nobody talks to her ever because of these things. I just feel so much for Laura. Yeah. Anyway, so they decide to call their club the 4 PTSs, for the 4 preteen sensations. And they come up with all sorts of rules, like they all have to start wearing bras if they're not already, and keep a boy book, which is a ranking of boys, which is awful.
Yeah, I see that theme so much in media. I'm sure at some point I probably did have a book with rankings of girls. Mm-hmm. But, you know, as I grew older, I knew that was not the right thing to do.
Right. You know, I mean, it's not as accepted for, you know, boys to have a list of girls, but I really don't think most people would have a problem with girls having rankings of guys like that, which is super problematic. And I mean, it never occurred to me till now that, yeah, that's really awful too. So anyways, not the best, guys, not the best. And they also have to tell each other when they get their periods because none of them have it yet. Margaret has to explain why she's not anything religious wise. It's because her mom's Christian and her dad's Jewish, and neither of their parents were exactly thrilled, so they eloped. Her mom's parents were really fucking awful. Margaret's never even met them because they told her they didn't want a Jewish son-in-law. If she wanted to ruin her life, that was her business. But they would never accept my father as her husband.
I know I was taught in the Christian religion that the man was the head of the household, and he was the one who pretty much led the rest of the family through their journey of religion. I don't know so much about the Jewish religion. I'm assuming that's probably the case as well.
Well, and plus this was 14 years before, so it was 1955 or 56. So, yeah, I mean, just societal-wise, you know, culture-wise, yeah. So, yeah, you can see why they didn't want, you know, their daughter and any children. I mean, not why, but I'm not saying this right at all. This is coming out very bad. Anyway, there are some anti-Semitic assholes, probably. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't ever say that straight out, that they don't like Jews, but it could just be that, yeah, they're afraid of a different religion completely from what they know, but I always took it as anti-Semitic. But
yeah, I mean, that's possible. And, you know, just having the belief that this person was going to hell anyway, so I don't really want anything to do with him.
Right.
Yeah. Which is probably a lot of what's going on with other religions in the world right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyways, this whole fucking chapter is a mess.
Yeah.
With the slut shaming and fat shaming and anyways. Apparently Margaret feels like she has to decide right now. So she'll know either to join the Y or the Jewish Community Center because they tell her everybody's in one or the other. So no pressure. That night, Margaret asked God to help her grow boobs. But she does ask her mom to take her bra shopping, and they do so for the first time that weekend, and it's super embarrassing. I don't remember getting my first bra, which I'm kind of surprised about because I know I did it after reading this book, but I don't remember anything about it. So at the next meeting, the girls check to see that they're all wearing bras by rubbing each other's backs. And they give details, of course, and Nancy has the biggest. And so she teaches them to do the we must increase our bust exercise. Unfortunately, Evan and Moose are spying on them and totally make fun of them. And I can't really blame them.
Yeah.
It always sounded ridiculous to me, as far as I can remember. Because, I'm not really sure I wanted to grow boobs. But it doesn't seem like that would work.
No, I mean, you can get some muscle tone there.
Exactly. It just seems like you'd be toning, and that's not... Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you might get a little bit larger, but muscle absorbs and eats fat, so it's going to take that fatty tissue away.
And boobs are fat sacs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, so it never made sense to me, but I always thought it was funny. And I know I've read it in different books.
There was a movie or something where they did the we must increase our bust.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty pervasive, I think. And yeah. Anyways. So the class, Mr. Benedict's class, they pull this prank where random kids just start peeping, making a peep noise like a bird. I've never heard of this. It's not a good prank. It's not a good prank. But Mr. Benedict rearranges their desks into a U shape. And Margaret has to sit next to Laura, and apparently that's like the worst thing ever.
So a good prank is like being in the last class of the day and turning up the AC, turning the heater on the AC and turning it all the way up. So that when they come in the morning, it's like really, really hot.
That's terrible. A good prank. That's terrible.
A bad prank is like what a guy I went to school with did, in which he put chalk and a cockroach in the coffee mug of a teacher. That's a bad prank.
That's terrible and just fucking rude. I never pulled pranks. I was too scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much of a good girl. Sorry. Okay. Was lining up in gym class by size a thing? In a line? They do it in the Babysitters Club too. So, yeah, it seems like a thing.
It was a thing in the military.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the point of it? Just to look good?
They said something about the way you're marching with the shorter people in. How was it? With the shorter people in front, then you could do ranks, and it was based on that. Like the first rank could lay down, the second rank could kneel, the third, crowd, anyway, that's what they said it was.
Okay.
Yeah, based on.
Interesting. But this was just one long line.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't.
That's
they all turned around.
Size shaming someone or seeing. Or
I don't
it could be
understand
somebody who's a coach of a junior high who's seeing who is good players are going to be in something else.
Maybe
later,
so. Okay. They're scouting them. Okay.
Yeah.
Creepy. Awful.
Okay. Categorizing.
They do another prank where they're taking this like real big social studies test, and it starts going around. Nobody's going to put any names on their tests. That horrified me, reading that.
Would not happen to me.
I would not do it.
If I accidentally left my name off, I would be horrified. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But no, if I studied for something, there's no way. I don't care what everybody else is doing.
I mean, that would lead to getting in trouble with your teacher and your parents. And so, yeah, that's worse than... Yeah, and probably getting a bad grade or no grade at all.
Right.
And yeah, that's worse than the other kids.
Because that's what my teachers would have done. Yeah. It would have been, well, I have no... So everybody gets the lowest grade.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, no, that wouldn't happen for me. And I got so nervous reading. Okay, so here's where Mr. Benedict gives the class this year-long project. It can be on anything as long as it's something meaningful to them. So Margaret decides on religion. And she starts this by going to Rosh Hashanah services with her grandmother, who is totally overjoyed. But Margaret doesn't really get anything out of it except
Margaret.
Except it's a New York accent, though. Can you do that?
Probably not with those words.
Anyways, Margaret really just counts the different colors of hats in front of her in the pews. I was always jealous. We didn't have people weren't wearing hats by the time I was going to church on a regular basis. I was like a little jealous.
I was 11, after the whole incident I talked about earlier, I was sitting in the pew following along in the Bible, writing notes.
Her parents are not at all encouraging about this, but they don't stop her, so that's good. Then she goes to the Presbyterian church with Janie, and she's surprised to learn that it's really a lot like Temple, except it's all in English and no Hebrew. She doesn't get what she'd hoped she would out of it, which was like to get some kind of feeling from it. Around Thanksgiving, the 6th grade holds a square dance. Margaret is thrilled when she gets to dance with Philip Leroy, the cutest boy. The cutest boy in their class, but he's a footstepper. So square dancing has super racist roots. Have you read that?
No.
I meant to look up everything about that, and I totally forgot. So anyway.
In what ways?
I totally forget. Did you have to learn square dancing in gym class?
We did some kind of dancing at one point. I'm sure it wasn't square dancing, though.
Really?
I don't think so. Maybe it was, though, because they were singing, "She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes." Stuff like that.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I know I had to learn it in, I'm pretty sure in Minnesota in gym class. So Henry Ford hated jazz. He was scared of it. So not only because of black people, who he did not think were necessarily evil, but, not as good as white people, but he also really hated Jewish.
I was going to say, but better than the Jews.
Right. He hated Jewish people and believed that they invented jazz as part of a nefarious plot to corrupt the masses and take over the world. So, Henry Ford and his wife had a long interest in what he termed old-fashioned dancing. So he thought he could counteract what he saw as the unwholesome influence of jazz on America. People he imagined would leave the dance halls and cabarets in droves to swing their partners round and round at liquor-free square dance clubs. If jazz was the cause of America's moral decay, the road to repair, it would be as simple as replacing it with fiddles and square dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he poured tons of money into square dancing and country music. So anyways, yeah. So that's carried on throughout gym classes. At least that I know.
He probably gave money to somebody to make it law to have to teach square dancing.
Probably so. Anyways, okay. Okay. Here's where we get. We talked before when we talked about Judy Blume about this being a very heavily banned book. Of course, not so much anymore, which is good because it's really not. I don't think there's that much. It just talks about periods and stuff. I know it's too much for some people. But here's one. Margaret's mother actually started the war on Christmas. Did you know? She calls them holiday cards, and they celebrate secular Christmas. The horror. Okay, so the school has a Christmas Hanukkah pageant. Mr. Benedict says that the songs are for everybody and had nothing to do with religion. Okay, Mr. Benedict. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because they are not secular Christmas songs that they're singing. Right. They are religious Christian songs. And so a Jewish boy brings a note in so that he doesn't have to sing the Christmas songs. And this Christian girl keeps her mouth closed during the Hanukkah songs. Super cool, everybody. Norman Fishbein. That's what I'm going to say. Norman Fishbein, the drippiest It's a horrible word. The drippiest boy in the class has a supper party over Christmas break. He invites the whole class over for this super fancy supper party. They have sandwiches, potato salad, and cut up hot dogs and beans. Fancy as fuck. I mean, I think that's a good 6th grade.
Fancy dinner party.
Yeah. But more importantly, they play spin the bottle. They only do cheek kisses for that, though. And they say, no fair boy kissing boy or girl kissing girl.
Right.
Would that really have been better? I mean, would boys have been cool kissing boys?
No, but it might have been girls kissing girls for friends, though. It might have been...
Yeah, that probably would have been okay.
Probably would have been, for some people, well, especially if they, instead of getting somebody they really didn't like,
right,
they would have rather kissed their friend on the cheek.
Or really liked. And yeah. Anyways, but they play it for a little while, and they decide it's lame because it's just cheek kisses. So they play 2 minutes in the closet. Philip Leroy calls out Margaret's number, and he kisses her on the lips twice, but really fast. And then Margaret accidentally calls out Norman's number, and she tells him just to kiss her on the cheek. But later that night, back at Margaret, she tells Nancy that Philip was a really good kisser, and he did it about 5 times. She ends up going to Christmas Eve services with the Wheelers, who are Methodists, and she enjoys it because it was mainly singing, the choir singing and all that. But she still doesn't feel God there. Yeah, I always liked the midnight services, Christmas Eve. Yeah, because it really was just singing and
we did
light candles, and it's nice. It's just nice. It just feels nice.
We did the sunrise service. We did sunrise service.
For Christmas?
For Easter.
For Easter, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Boy,
yeah,
did I
Methodists
not like
do that. I don't think we ever did that.
Way too early to get up.
Yeah, I think my mom probably would have known that would have just been a losing battle. Because I know our church has offered it, but yeah, nah. So in January, all right, y'all, they split the girls and the boys up, and the girls go watch a movie on Menstrooation, sponsored by the Private Lady Company. Margaret says it's basically just one big commercial, and it's all stuff they knew already anyways. Yeah. Oh, except there's one point, they dare to say that it's not painful. Periods. Fuck that. I'm hoping they mean that the actual bleeding doesn't hurt. That's what I'm
thinking, yes. Okay. That the actual bleeding doesn't, but...
Because it does not. But don't tell them this shit's not going to hurt over. Oh, my God. So a week later, Gretchen gets her period. She doesn't have too many details to share, though. And that just, really disappoints Nancy. So she got her period during dinner. And... they didn't have any pads in the house because her mom uses tampons. So they ordered pads, not Private Lady Company, but Teenage Softies, to be delivered from the drugstore that night. Which it's kind of like having Postmates back in the day. There was probably a period there was a period you couldn't just call and order something and they deliver it to your house, but way back in the day. And then now you can do it on apps. So... I just think it's weird. I don't know. Interesting that there was a period of time where you could not do that. But it's gone back to it. Anyways. Because that's handy as hell.
Yeah.
Being able to order some freaking pads. The next month, Margaret gets a postcard from Nancy while she's in Washington saying that she got her period. And Margaret's pretty upset. Especially when her mom tells her that she herself didn't start until she was 14. Margaret says she thinks she'll die if she has to wait that long.
She's like, I'm not waiting that long. I don't think you have a choice.
Here's the overall thing about it. I never wanted to get my period. I understand that it's you're growing up. It's an actual irrefutable sign that you're growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never had an interest in it like that, though. No, thank you. Not a big fan of how they keep using the word normal for when to start. There's no normal. It's so many different factors.
Yeah.
So Nancy asked Margaret to go along with her family to New York. And while they're at a restaurant, the girls go to the bathroom, and Nancy starts freaking out in the stall and asks Margaret to go get her mom. And her mom comes in and asks Margaret to get a pad out of the machine for her because Nancy's gotten her period. And Margaret's like, is she always like this? But her mom's like, this is her first time. So, yeah, Nancy lied. Begs Margaret not to tell the others. And of course she doesn't because she's good people.
Fucking Nancy.
On Margaret's 12th birthday, she begins using deodorant because she thinks that's what age you start to smell. But also on that day, Mr. Benedict assigns a committee project. And Margaret's in a group with Norman, Philip, and Laura Danker. Philip is terrible and completely slacks off, but Norman's just slow. And Laura's a good worker, but Margaret would never tell her that. And she says, I hated her. I hated her for being so big and beautiful and having all the boys stare at her, including Mr. Benedict. Also, I hated her because she knew she was normal and I didn't know a thing about me. And then she continues with, I hated Mr. Benedict, too, for sticking me with Norman Fishburne. With Norman. Fishburne. Norman is such a drip. I think, okay, I got really into it on this time, but I think this is like a really good example of like a toxic personality and being friends with a toxic personality. Because like Margaret's like slowly becoming more judgy.
Yeah.
And sounding more like Nancy. Right. And a little bit, she says to herself, I was being awful and I was sounding like Nancy. Yeah. But yeah, I hadn't considered that before, but man, that's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day, Margaret and Laura stayed late at the library to look up Belgium in the encyclopedias because that's what their project is on. And Laura accuses Margaret of copying straight from the book because she was totally distracted thinking about Laura. And then Margaret accuses Laura of doing dirty stuff with boys. And so Laura is just like out of there and really upset. I don't blame her. Margaret runs after her apologizing, but Laura's like, nah. And she goes into the Catholic Church to go to confession.
Yeah, I think she started reflecting on, oh yeah, it was Nancy that told me that.
Yeah.
And Nancy lied about getting her period too.
Yeah.
So
what's up with Nancy?
Yeah. So maybe that's not right.
So after a minute, Margaret follows her into the Catholic Church and she sees Laura come out of a little booth and then leave. And so she goes into the booth herself and she hears a voice that says, yes, my child. And she truly, for real, believes it's God at first. But then realizes it's the priest behind the screen. And she runs away not knowing what to say. I don't blame her in the least for thinking that was God. Okay. So my first Mass, when I was 9, I was absolutely convinced by the way the priest was talking that there was going to be an actual piece of Jesus in the tabernacle where they kept the Eucharist. I thought like they would, actually use bread and wine or juice symbolically, but I thought it just might be, I thought it really might be possible that the Catholic Church like had actual pieces of Jesus to just like hand out to different churches, just like little bits of, I don't know, like the Vatican handed them out.
Now, are you talking about like a piece of a saint? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you thinking about like that they had pieces of Jesus to hand out for wafers?
Well, no, they wouldn't actually use it for wafers, but they had it there in the tabernacle.
Okay.
Where they kept like the wafers and the stuff. Yeah. I thought there was an actual piece of Jesus in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not so far-fetched because I've read enough things about Catholic Church where they have pieces of everything.
Oh.
Of all the saints. Oh. They've got
But like every Catholic church doesn't have that.
But
right? But like
there's
the Vatican,
enough pieces that, okay, they had the arm at one time. Well, now we're taking the finger bone, one of the finger bones, and we're giving it to this church. Yeah, so...
Okay, so I was not crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
is plausible.
Okay. Well, okay. So here's what I was looking up about it. I mean, they do go into this whole big thing because the Catholics do believe that the presence of Christ in the Eucharist is real. And it's not objective or dependent on faith. Right. It's actually because they believe in transubstantiation.
Right.
So the way he was talking before, leading up to communion, it was like, okay, yeah, it sounds like it's really in there because he really did believe that. Yeah. So, yeah. So it was a real big disappointment.
Yeah, so like I was just reading earlier about it. Some of the things in the cathedral at Notre Dame, like one of them was the crown of thorns.
Yeah, but some dude grabbed that on his way out.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. By the way, this is April 15th. It's a very sad day when the Cathedral of Notre Dame burned down. And yeah, we don't feel much on religion, but we do about history and architecture and art and
about some of the good things that came out of religion and art and architecture. Two of those for sure.
But so far as we know right now, nobody was killed, and they got pretty much all the art. So great job, everyone. Anyways, yeah, it said just some dude like grabbed the crown of thorns on his way out. I'm like, damn, dude. Okay, so here's what I learned last night. Looking all this up, I've just now, at the age of 36, found out that apparently Methodists believe that the sacrament of Holy Communion is an instrumental means of grace through which the real presence of Christ is communicated to the believer, but have otherwise allowed the details to remain a mystery. I never got that in all my Methodist upbringing. I just thought it was symbolic. But anyways, it sounds like, yeah, we want to believe it, but we can't explain how, so it's a mystery, because we won't go so far as to say we believe in transubstantiation, but yeah. Anyways, yeah, I never learned that in all my formative years. So that first Mass, I was super shy and scared, and all this shit was new to me, and I was new at the school, and I was very shy, and
nobody was telling you what to do, I bet.
Well, my teacher had told me not to go up and receive communion. But because I was so freaked out, when the whole class stood up and went, I went up and got some, and I got in trouble because I was not Catholic and had not. Yeah, I wasn't Catholic. That's what it is. They believe that, anybody outside the Catholic faith doesn't believe that it's actual Christ, and so they don't get to receive it. Yeah, that was awful. And so for the entire 2 years, we went to Mass every first Friday as part of school. And I just had to sit there by myself while the rest of the school was lining up to receive communion. And it was awful for a really shy kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, a little bit of trauma from that still. Oh, yeah. I did ask you if Baptists do communion, and you weren't real sure.
Yeah, they do it monthly.
Yeah. Okay. Like the Methodists, or that I went to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. Yeah.
Did you have the cute little cups of grape juice?
Yep. They would have a little round tray that held probably 20.
With the little holes in it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I had most of the time. And then I think my first church, we had like little, they looked like chiclets, little bread thingies.
Yeah, that's basically,
okay,
what we got.
But at our cool church outside of Austin,
it was unleavened bread.
Yeah. Somebody just like made bread every month, and it was delicious, and you got to dunk it in like a big like goblet of grape juice, and it was like, that shit was good. Anyways, yeah, that was the best church I've ever been to. They also had a blessing of the animals every year.
Really?
St. Francis. Yeah. Yeah, it was super cool. Outside of Austin, you know. But yeah, that was a good church.
Oh, so you had saints?
No, but I think, no, I mean, we didn't have saints like the Catholics, but, you knew of them and, and he was this religious guy who did shit for animals and stuff. So, yeah, so we appreciate that. Anyways. So Margaret's mom receives a letter from her parents, who she hasn't talked to in 14 years. But she had sent them a Christmas card because she was feeling sentimental. And Margaret's dad gets super fucking pissed. And I'm on his side on this one because, I mean, her mom says he's being ridiculous. But please remember, they told her they didn't want a Jewish son-in-law. If she wanted to ruin her life, that was her business. But they would never accept my father as her husband. Yeah, dog. But they say they're getting older now, wondering if they made a mistake back in the day, and so they talked it over with their minister and decided to invite themselves to stay, which will be during Margaret's spring break, which means she can't go to Florida to visit Sylvia like had been planned, and she is like real pissed about that. I don't blame her. So Margaret's mom tells her that she'll tell Sylvia, but Margaret has to end up telling her the whys and everything. I think that's some shit. Yeah, I mean, like, she puts her on the phone so Sylvia knows Margaret's okay, but that leads to her having to tell him that shit. And unfortunately, she thinks this is all a punishment from God for being terrible to Laura. So, these other grandparents are extremely Christian, and they call each other father and mother. And now on this reread, I can only see them as Mike Pence and his wife because they call each other father and mother. And so now I really hate them. Yeah. They say Margaret must be a Christian too. And she gets pissed off and
everybody knows it's the religion of the mother.
Right. Which, I mean, is how it happened for me. Yeah. Not for my dad and his siblings, though, because my grandparents, it was the same thing. He was Catholic and she was Methodist. Yeah, but they were definitely raised Catholic, so, yeah. But anyway, she gets real pissed off and yells that she's not anything, and she doesn't even believe in God. And so now she decides that she's mad at God and won't talk to him anymore. So no more praying. She needs to get out of the house for a little while with them there, and so she goes to a movie with Janie, and they meet at a drugstore and go look at the sanitary napkins, and they're fascinated by them. And Margaret's like, hey, let's be brave and buy some. Janie's like way too embarrassed, so Margaret buys it for both of them. Okay, and so here's where the difference is. So you listen to this on audiobook. Was it from the newer edition probably, where she just stuck the pad in her underwear, or did it have the belt?
No, it was a sticky pad, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But had you read?
I do remember the original having the belt, yeah.
That's why I have two copies, because I have the older one that I read and then the new one, because I was like, how'd they change it? But yeah, it's not so big of a change, but we definitely weren't using, or like my mom wasn't using belts and all this shenanigans when I was reading the book. I never understood what was happening there. It's like, it's a belt? How does it goes around your waist? How does it go down there? It was very confusing. I mean, I've looked it up since. Thank you, internet. That would have been really handy to have back in the day. Yeah. Because I certainly wasn't going to ask. But, yeah. So, yeah, they've changed it for newer ones, and it's just, thank goodness, because that's confusing as fuck. Yeah. So her grandparents decide to leave early and go to New York, and everyone's real glad to see them leave, even though Margaret's like, they ruined my whole vacation for nothing. They were here for 2 days. And her dad's like, they just use this as an excuse to go to New York.
They probably had New York planned the whole time.
Motherfuckers. Fuck you, Pences. Yeah, we can pretend her maiden name was Pence. Yeah, let's go with that. But guess what? Sylvia shows up with her man friend, Mr. Bitterman. Rhymes with cinnamon. She wanted to meet the other grandparents, and I would have loved to have seen that showdown.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm glad for Margaret's sake that she didn't have to see that, because that probably would have been pretty terrible and traumatic. Sylvia asks if any church stuff comes up, and she says she always knew Margaret was Jewish, and this makes Margaret mad again, and she insists that she doesn't believe in God, although she does admit to us that she misses talking to him. And she says Grandma is almost as bad as everybody else. As long as she loves me and I love her, what difference does religion make? Preach, Margaret. Preach. So, at the end of the year, she ends up just writing a letter to Mr. Benedict for her religion project. And she tells him about the church. She just kind of lists the churches she went to, as well as some books on Catholicism, Judaism, and history of Christianity that she's read. So she did go more into it than we see, but she didn't try being a Buddhist or a Muslim because she doesn't know anyone of those religions. But I'm psyched they got a shout out in 1970, you know? She said she did not enjoy her religious experiment, and that if she has kids, she'll tell them what they are when they're young, so they can start learning early, because 12 is very late. So it's like, no matter what parents decide for their kid's probably going to end up thinking it was the wrong decision and go the other way, is what I take from that. Yeah. Okay, but I never understood.
I will say that in my comparative religious studies, that I found Buddhists to be the most interesting.
Yeah.
Mainly because when he originally when he was originally having his thoughts, it was all based on science and scientific observation. And then when he went and started telling these things to people, it started blowing their mind, and they were like, "This is divine thought. This came from somewhere." And as it started getting written down, it then became a religion that became supernatural. But, you know, like the whole idea of reincarnation was his observation of animals that would die. Other animals would come feed on it. It would deteriorate. It would go into the soil, and then flowers would grow. So the things around it were taking that, and it was becoming other things.
Yeah.
That was his original. That was his original observations on reincarnation, which
it's fucking lovely.
Yeah, which later became, supernatural. Right. Okay, you're going into something completely new, and your soul, spirit, whatever it goes into. But yeah, that initial shit really. Yeah. So I never understood how she got away with just handing in a letter while everybody else, has these big booklets and stuff. Like, that letter would have been a really fine introduction to, a more detailed project. Yeah. Yeah, it's always stressed me out that she just... Could you imagine just handing in a letter when everybody else has those, booklets? Yeah, I would have been probably anxious about it. Mm-hmm. But it also comes down to substance and what you personally really learned from it. Yeah. There are a lot of people who can copy stuff and make something long and still learn very little from it. Right. And so if you actually have substance about this is the journey I took to get to this place, I can see that. Yeah, I see how it was acceptable to Mr. Benedict, but I wouldn't have felt there was enough physical proof to show that I had substance from what I learned, I think. Yeah. Besides, I like making the little booklets, with the clear plastic covers. And, yeah. Oh, that's good shit. Anyway. So summer starts, and finally, so does Margaret's period. She's like over the moon excited. Can we talk about what happened before she got her period? When she goes to talk to Moose? Yes. She's talking to Moose and telling him that he's a liar because... Oh, right. because he didn't go behind the A&P with Homegirl.
Yeah, and he's been telling everybody that he has.
And he's like, well, who did you hear that from, And then he's like telling you shouldn't believe everything you hear from people. And
especially Nancy.
And I've got things to do. Can you get... I think...
Okay. Oh, theory.
I think Moose made her go into her womanhood. He forced his womanhood with his machismo.
You are so proud of yourself.
I mean, it's like he was talking to her. She goes into the house. She has her period.
Yes, that is. That is indeed the sequence of events. So you think he is just so manly and charming that he brings upon
that he turns her into a woman just talking
to her. Boy. Oh wow! Okay.
I mean listen. Okay, so I listened to the book twice, and that is how it came across to me both times.
Okay, I get it. I think I get it. Okay, that's hilarious. So, are you impressed with Moose? Like, dang, dude.
And he was very nonchalant about it.
He was, because she's just this little 12-year-old girl. So anyway. She is over the moon excited that Moose brought upon her period. Her mom tries to show her what to do, but she just laughs at her and says, hey, I've been practicing for months. Don't worry about it. And then she checks in with God and says, hey, thanks,
big buddy.
I guess, really now, thanks for sending Moose to me. So I did not have this reaction when I started my period.
No.
I kept it a secret.
Really?
Yes. I started my period, I think, the month before I turned 12. And we moved that summer. And I don't know. I was just so embarrassed about it. I was, like I say, I was very, very shy.
Were you sneaking?
Yeah. My mom had
products?
pads. So, yeah, I used them. And I mean, when you first start, you don't really have a heavy flow or anything. So I probably wasn't using that many, and I guess she didn't notice. But yeah, it wasn't like much longer, but for a few months I hid it, but then she was doing laundry.
Yeah.
Did you start your period? Yeah. And I don't think we really talked about it much, or at least I remember. I might have blacked it out, but
yeah. All my puberty stuff, I had there was nobody I talked to.
Yeah.
It was just I just went through it, and that's how I learned about it.
See, that's what I prefer to do, unless what I could, glean from books like this. Yeah. Yeah.
Other than the nocturnal emissions, there probably wasn't a lot I got from books.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least you had that, though, because that's a pretty big thing. Yeah. Yeah, still not a big fan. Since I'm never planning on having kids, I don't see any point of it. And everybody says it's like not gross, because it's natural and stuff. And so, but I don't have that take. I think it's something you shouldn't be ashamed of. But it's a lot of blood, and that's gross. Yeah. For me, at least. You do you. But it's not something to be ashamed of or anything. Yeah. Which I think is what people are trying to say. But it's gross. Not a fan. I'm so ready to go into menopause. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I got. Jess is ready for menopause. So, yeah, did you feel like you learned? I mean, not now, but when you originally read it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you learned a lot about girls. Did you...
Maybe.
I don't know. Did it make you empathetic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so did you not make fun of girls for any were you like a bra snapper or anything?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, no.
I mean, I don't remember specific, but I'm sure.
Yeah. Anyways, this has been our very special Holy Week religion episode. Hope everyone enjoyed it. And if you did, guys, please, may I send you over to iTunes to rate. We don't have any ratings yet, and I know you're out there listening to us, so please, we invite you. If God puts it on your heart this week to if it's how you stop. If it's how you roll, pray to God and, ask him to put it on your heart to give us however many stars you believe we've earned. And tell your friends if he so leads you to do that as well. Or subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and all the other places. Check out our website at fightingoverthecardcatalog.com. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Fighting Over the Card Catalog and on Twitter at Card Catalog Pod. So next week, we're going to continue with the Babysitter's Club and read the 4th book, Marianne Saves the Day. Now, I know we have a lot to do this week and weekend. I've got a surprise for you. Don't worry. We're going to get it covered. So, we're rereading the books of your childhood.
So you don't have to.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.